I stood in the hallway holding the apple spice cake with both hands, afraid it would slide from the platter. Ezra's voice carried easily over the half wall that separated the kitchen from the living room. She won't know. The account's in both our names. He wasn't whispering. He didn't think he needed to. I didn't move. Not at first. My fingers tightened around the rim of the plate until I felt the edge bite into my skin. I heard him laugh, light easy, like it was just another clever plan. Something between him and a friend. Some little scheme he'd charm his way through. She doesn't even check it. I'll take it slow, 40 here, 50 there. She won't notice. I took a single step back and almost stumbled into the counter. The cake wobbled, nearly toppled. I set it down carefully, like it might explode. My breath was shallow. My ears were ringing. I felt every year in my bones. Ezra had come by to print something, or so he'd said. A proposal, a pitch. He sat with his laptop on the coffee table while I sliced tomatoes for sandwiches. His favorite turkey and Swiss. I always made them with rye. I don't even remember why anymore. I reached for the phone. My hands were shaking, but not from age this time. I scrolled to the bank's number, the one I'd kept in my paper planner for years. I didn't call. Not yet. First I listened a moment longer. She's had her life, Ezra said. It's not like she needs all that money. I pressed the phone to my chest and stood there while the cake cooled and the knife rested beside it. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just moved. Quiet, certain. By noon, the account would be his no longer. And by the end of the day, I'd be gone from his reach. I've always believed in balance books. Alphabetized bills paid early bread dough needed exactly 10 minutes. Walter used to joke that I could run a submarine with the precision I brought to our grocery lists. Maybe that's why I trusted structure so much. If I wrote it down, if I planned carefully, nothing could go wrong. After he passed, I made changes slowly. I wasn't the kind to rush into anything. I sold his truck, but kept the tools. I kept his old flannel jacket in the coat closet just behind mine. I canceled the magazine subscriptions, but left his name on the library card. I paid off the last bit of the mortgage and put everything savings pension insurance into accounts that felt secure. And like everyone kept telling me to do, I added both my children to the accounts just in case. Miriam lives in Colorado. Good job. Good husband. 2 girls who send me handmade cards with glitter that never quite washes off. She's responsible to the core like her father, but too far to handle anything quickly if something were to happen. Ezra was local. That mattered. He started dropping by more after Walter died, offering to help with the recycling bins, clipping the hedge, even replacing a light bulb in the laundry room I'd been putting off. It felt good for a while. Like maybe he was finally settling into the kind of son I always hoped he'd be. He'd never been steady, not like Miriam. 1 semester of community college, then a parade of jobs with titles I didn't fully understand. Social media something. Branding consultant, event freelancer, always starting over, always borrowing tools he never returned. Still, when Walter died, and Ezra offered to help with the paperwork I let him. He sat beside me at the bank, let me sign the forms, patted my shoulder when I hesitated. "It's just in case, Mom," he said. "This way, if anything happens, I can help." And I believed him. That morning, when I heard him through the wall, it wasn't just the words. It was the reminder that he'd been positioning himself for this moment all along. Ezra has always been a collector of openings, tiny doorways in conversations, in favors, in guilt. He doesn't push. He doesn't demand. He just waits for the smallest crack, then wedges himself inside, like the suggestion was yours all along. After Walter's funeral, the visits didn't slow. They increased. He came by with lattes in cardboard sleeves. He carried in grocery bags I never asked for. He tightened a loose cabinet handle reset. The rooter oiled the back door hinge so it closed without its usual sigh. Small things. Quiet things. Useful things. I thought, this is grief. This is him trying. He never asked for anything outright, at least not at first. He'd sit at my dining table, Walter's place, at the head left, intentionally empty, and talk about insurance forms, property tax interest rates. He made it sound like a language he was translating for me, like protection, like advocacy. "You shouldn't have to worry about this stuff anymore, Mom," he'd say, leaning back in his chair like someone who carried answers. "Let me handle the logistics." He said logistics like it was love. The suggestion about the account came on a Sunday morning while the kettle was still whistling. We were sitting with mugs warming our palms. My ledgers were open, neat columns of blue ink marching down the page. "You ever think about what would happen if you couldn't get to the bank?" he asked gently. No pressure, just curiosity. He painted it like foresight, like disaster planning, like responsible adulthood finally blooming inside him. "Just put my name on the account as a backup. Purely for emergencies," he said. "Nothing changes. You still control everything. I'll just be a safety net." I wanted to believe the net was for catching me if I fell, not hoisting him up. But loneliness makes the mind soft. Grief smooths the sharp edges of judgment. And trust, once starved, eats fast. So I nodded. And in that tiny tilt of my head, he mistook stewardship for ownership. It never started with a big ask. "First it was $2,000 for tires," he said. "Can't get to job interviews if I'm riding on rubber ribbons, Mom." He laughed, made it sound like a joke. I wrote the check. A month later, $4,000 for a training course. "Digital something or other," he said. I nodded, not understanding most of it. "This one's different. It's accredited. I'll be certified to take on clients, legit ones." He always said that this time's different. And I wanted to believe him. He was my son. Miriam didn't. "You're funding his lifestyle, Mom." "That's not help, it's enabling." Her words were clipped. Her voice low but firm during one of our Sunday calls. I told her it wasn't like that. That Ezra was just going through a rough patch. Divorce had left him in pieces. His work dried up. He was trying. Wasn't he? His texts always came at night. Short, casual. Sometimes he'd call. Hate to ask. "Just a little tight this month. I'll pay it back." "You know I will." And I did know, except I didn't believe. Not really. But by then it felt easier to give in than to argue. Easier to offer than to ask him to explain why his rent was always overdue. Why his car always needed fixing. Why the next job never quite landed. The account became a sort of slow drip. A transfer here, a check there. Each request felt harmless on its own, wrapped in good intentions. And I still checked the ledger each Monday morning. At first. But then a few weeks passed, and I didn't open the bank app, didn't flip through the statements. I let it sit. I told myself things were fine. Ezra hadn't asked in a while. He was picking up freelance work. He even brought me groceries once. Maybe we'd turned a corner. Maybe he meant it when he said this was the last time. I wanted peace. And peace, even false peace, can make you forget how to count. Until the hallway. Until the knife-sharp voice and the cake in my hand. The call came at 10:12 a.m. on a Thursday, while I was watering the geraniums on the back step. "Mom, you mind if I swing by? Need to print something quick. Pitch deck for a client," he said, breathless like someone racing against the clock. "Of course," I said, wiping the dirt off my palms. "I'll make us lunch." He arrived 15 minutes later, sliding into the driveway with the casualness of routine. No hesitation, no tension. Just Ezra. The mop of hair, a little too long, the button down, a little too wrinkled, the charm set to autopilot. I put on the kettle sliced bread, laid out turkey, cheese, mustard. Assembly line precision. Comfort disguised as normalcy. The printer hummed to life in the living room. He tapped at his laptop phone wedged between shoulder and ear. I thought nothing of it. until the conversation shifted. We'll start with 40, maybe 50K, he said. Too casually. She never checks. My hands froze mid-slice. The tomato rolled against the board. I'll tell her it's an investment. She believes anything I say. He continued, softer now, but still loud enough to travel the short distance between us. The knife thudded onto the counter. Not violently, just enough to mark the moment. She's old school, man. The money just sits there. I'll move it slow. She won't notice until it's done. The world narrowed. It was like standing outside of your own body, watching your life get narrated in a voice you once rocked to sleep. She's had her turn. Now it's mine, he said with a half laugh. Anyway, I'll call you after I hit the bank. The words didn't bruise. They sliced. I forced a breath in and reached for the plates. My legs felt like water, but my face did not move. My pulse roared, but my voice would remain calm. By the time he hung up and looked my way, lunch was already plated, waiting ordinary as sunlight, and my next move was already certain. By 3:45 that afternoon, I was sitting across from the bank manager at the same branch Walter and I had used for nearly 40 years. The chairs were the same. The soft jazz was the same. But nothing in me felt familiar. I need to remove my son's name from my savings account, I said. The manager, Paula, mid-50s, polite but brisk, didn't ask many questions. Just nodded, retrieved the forms, and led me through each signature like a quiet, practiced ritual. When she asked if I'd like to transfer the funds into a new account for added security, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. All of it. Within 20 minutes, $840,000 was sitting in a fresh account under my name only. The original joint account, now almost empty, was left open with exactly 17 cents. Not enough for a bus ride, let alone a heist. As I walked out, the late sun hit the glass doors and I saw myself in the reflection. Same coat, same sensible shoes, but something had shifted. I wasn't a woman wondering what would happen anymore. I was a woman who had already acted. At home, I poured a glass of water and sat by the window. I expected the adrenaline to crash, but it didn't. Just a steady quiet, the kind that follows a storm no one else noticed. At 7:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Ezra. Thanks again for lunch, Mom. Those sandwiches hit the spot. I stared at the message, my hands calm, my face still. Then I typed back, me glad you liked them. Let me know if that pitch goes well. He replied with a thumbs up. I put the phone face down and turned off the living room light. Tomorrow would come soon enough. I didn't have to chase it. I'd already closed the door. Now I just had to wait and see which one he would try to open. The call came at 9:12 a.m. Sharp. Ezra's name flashed on my screen and I felt my breath shorten. I need to talk, he said. Now. I didn't ask questions. I'm home. He didn't knock. He still had a key. I heard the door open and close his steps quick and heavy. When he rounded the corner into the living room, his face was flushed, jaw tight, hands balled into fists. You moved the money. I didn't flinch. I did. You had no right. I stood, not rising to argue, just standing on solid ground. I had every right. It was never yours. His voice rose. My name was on that account and now it isn't. You don't need it. You're just going to leave it to us anyway. There it was. The truth like a hammer on glass. I wasn't a mother. I was a waiting vault. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I looked him in the eye and said, I need it because it's mine. Your father and I worked for every cent of that money. It's not a prize for outliving us. He took a step closer, and for a second, I saw something in his face. Rage, maybe, or disbelief that I'd actually done it. You're punishing me for nothing. No, I said. I'm protecting myself from someone who made a plan to take what wasn't his. That's not punishment. That's survival. Ezra's mouth opened. then closed. His nostrils flared. "You think this is over? You think you can just cut me out? You cut yourself out the moment you thought I wouldn't hear you." He stared at me like I was a stranger. I reached toward the table. "Leave your key." His eyes narrowed. He hesitated, then yanked it from his ring and slapped it down hard enough to rattle the coaster underneath. "This is a mistake," he said. I didn't answer. He left without another word. The silence after the door shut felt like the end of something, and the beginning of what came next. I stood there for a long time after he left, just listening to the echo of the door slamming. The sound seemed to press into the walls, into the air, into me. The last time I heard Ezra cry, he was 6 and scraped his knee on the driveway. I carried him inside, pressed a cool washcloth to his skin, kissed his forehead, told him he was brave. I would have given anything to stop his pain. That boy was gone now. This man who looked like my son, had come into my home with teeth bared. Because I didn't let him rob me. "Were you really going to do it?" I'd asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not with anything that would change the truth. That truth sat with me on the couch, curled in the silence, tight and raw and unmovable. He would have taken it all. Lied, withdrawn, moved on like it had always belonged to him. I'd told him to leave, told him to hand over the key, and for once he didn't argue. He didn't cry. He didn't say he was sorry, just placed the key on the table and walked out like a man denied a job he felt entitled to. The house felt different after, colder, quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful. I wanted to cry but couldn't. My body didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. I kept walking in circles, living room to kitchen to hallway, and back again, half expecting him to knock, half dreading it. But he didn't come back. He didn't call. By evening I made tea, sat in the chair Walter used to favor, let my spine settle. The sun was setting through the front windows, casting long shadows over the floor. For the first time I let myself feel it, not just the betrayal, but the ache behind it. You raise someone. You pour everything into them, and then one day you hear their voice in the other room planning how to take what you've saved. I stared at the place where he'd left the key, and I finally cried. The locksmith came on a Monday morning. Young man, polite, didn't ask questions. He replaced every lock, front door, back door, garage, even the little side gate Walter had installed years ago. When he handed me the new keys, they felt heavier than the old ones. Not in weight, just in meaning. Next I called Miriam. I hadn't told her everything yet, only enough for her to say I'm flying in. By Tuesday evening, she was at my kitchen table with folders and her laptop sleeves rolled up, eyes focused. "Let's put up walls, Mom. Legal ones." We called her friend from Colorado, an estate lawyer who specialized in elder financial protection. I signed papers. We built a trust, solid, clear, enforceable. Half for Miriam, half for Ezra, but nothing early. No loopholes, no touching it unless I was gone. I also rewrote my will, removed vague clauses, left instructions for my funeral, my assets, even my dog's care should anything happen. There wouldn't be room for confusion or charm. Miriam didn't cry. Not in front of me. But I caught her once in the hallway, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I should have seen it," she whispered. "You did," I said. I just didn't want to. Later that week, I went to a support meeting. A church basement linoleum floors a coffee pot, humming in the corner. We sat in folding chairs, mostly women, mostly older. Some had lost everything. Others caught it just in time. One woman said her grandson had drained her credit card to buy a motorcycle. Another said her niece forged checks from her retirement account. Every story was different. Every story was the same. We didn't cry much. We nodded a lot. That quiet recognition of trust broken, of boundaries reclaimed. When I got home, I put the new legal documents in a fireproof box. Locked it. Labeled it. Placed it beside my bed. Then I made tea, sat on the porch, and watched the wind roll through the birch trees. Ezra hadn't called, hadn't texted. Not yet. But I knew he would. It's been 10 months since that afternoon in the hallway. The day the voice I trusted most turned into something I didn't recognize. Ezra hasn't come by since. He sent a birthday card blank inside, not even signed. A few weeks later, a message that read simply, "Hope you're doing okay." It landed like a stone in my inbox. I didn't reply. Miriam visits every 6 weeks now, sometimes with her husband, sometimes with the kids. They fill the house with clatter and crumbs and stories. I find myself laughing more, though not always loudly. There's a softness in the way we move around each other, less assuming, more careful. The gardens changed too. I planted fewer tomatoes this year. Replaced the overgrown squash bed with wildflowers. Let things bloom without needing to be useful. I spend most mornings out there now, hands in dirt, coffee cooling beside me. Inside the house is quieter, but it doesn't ache like it used to. I dust less often. I read more. I even bought a new ledger book, this one with thick lined paper and a red ribbon to mark the page. It's not fear that drives me to keep records anymore. It's habit. But it's mine again. Every so often, I still bake Walter's apple spice cake. The recipe's on a yellowed index card, the edges soft from use. He liked it with strong black coffee and silence on Sunday mornings. I made it last weekend. Sat by the window with one slice and let the rest cool on the rack without rushing. I don't think peace is something that arrives all at once. I think it creeps in slowly, quietly, like warm air through an open window. Yesterday, I saw a pair of robins nesting in the eaves. I stood still, watching them gather twigs, piece by piece. They weren't in a hurry, and for the first time in a long time, neither was I.